to Win. Today, we're going to be talking about trauma. We've all gone through trauma sometime in our life, but we're going to be looking at trauma within children. How best can a foster carer, parent, support worker, teacher support children that have gone through traumatic ordeals? Today, my guest is Elizabeth Dixon, a therapist for children, and she will be talking us through how to support children who've gone through traumatic ordeals. Thank you for coming to the show, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, what exactly is trauma?
Well, in summary, trauma is an experience that the child may have gone through, and it's something that they can't necessarily manage depending on how resilient that child is. And they may have reoccurring thoughts or memories about that experience which leave them distressed.
So for a child that has gone through, witnessed domestic violence, are you saying that they will kind of keep reliving that situation?
Some of them can, yeah, depending on the experience. Some of them may shut down and dissociate. Some of them may lash out, and it can cause them behaviour problems and challenges in the home or in the school setting.
When you say dissociate, what do you actually, when you say some can dissociate, what do you mean?
So some of them can stop talking, or choose not to bond or relate with other individuals how a child would. So not wanting friends, maybe being unkind to other children because of the pain that they're feeling and that they're re-experiencing and that they can't manage.
So the disassociation would be kind of, in a way, like a shutting down. They would actually just shut down.
It can be.
And not want to engage or do the normal things that children do, as you're saying.
They can have challenges around concentration.
Wow.
So their concentration span would be a lot shorter.
Right.
Would give them challenges at school, because at school they're expected to focus for a certain period of time, depending on the age of the child. And sometimes, depending on the experiences that they've gone through, they find it hard to take instruction from adults. So because the adults that's been caring for them, it's not been a safe environment, they would have challenges with that at school, where an adult would be telling them what to do. They may not be trusting of that adult at school.
Wow. So it can actually bring so many different, it can bring up so many different things, and they seem to be quite negative things. Should you, for a child that's actually gone through trauma, is it something that you should talk to them about?
You mean the parent in the home?
Yeah, the parent, the guardian, the foster carer, teacher.
I think where we, the parent or the carer, the person at the home, it's not something to keep on talking to the child about, because it could almost enable the child to go through the trauma over and over again. It would be useful for that once, for the child to, for the parent to acknowledge and the carer to acknowledge what the child has gone through. Let the child know that they're there, and any time that the child wants to talk to them about it, that they can. Or even if they don't want to talk to them about it, but maybe just want a hug, or maybe to do something special, to let that, to have that opening for the child available.
So it's really, that sounds like it's tuning in to the child's needs.
Definitely.
At a particular time.
Definitely. But with the teachers at school, depending on the setup at school, for myself, the experience that I've had where children have gone through a lot of trauma in the primary school setting, it was more about the head teacher and senior members of staff being aware of what's going on in the home, and just letting the teachers know that there's challenges in the home, rather than giving the teachers intricate details of exactly what the child's gone through. So, because we don't want the teachers to be mentioning anything like that in the classroom, because you want the child to feel safe in the classroom.
Right. So confidentiality it plays an important part, doesn't it?
Definitely.
In terms of keeping the child safe, and
Yeah.
I suppose also not safeguarding the child in being judged.
Yeah, that as well. Because the teacher may not know how to manage whatever situation that the child's gone through. Senior members of staff and head teachers have more experience with safeguarding, and you would hope that in their professionalism they would be able to manage those situations better.
Do you think that a child that's gone through a traumatic ordeal, whether it be parents splitting up, whether it be being taken from their parents and having to be put into care because of safeguarding them, or even them going through something traumatic as sexual abuse, self-harm, do you think corporate punishment, when I say corporate, traditional punishment, shall we say, what, like losing your playtime in school, or maybe having to do lines, or not going on a particular trip because of their behaviour, because they're displaying, unacceptable behaviour. Do you think traditional punishment is the way forward?
So how the behaviour would be managed within the school?
Within the school.
I feel each case should be managed individually, and depending on the trauma that the child has experienced, for that to be assessed by the head teacher or the senior members of staff. In my professional opinion, I don't think that the normal behaviour system should be applied to those particular children that have gone through that traumatic experience. There should be some sort of individual, not saying that the child can get away with, misbehaving and if they're disrupting the class, but just have a different way of managing that. So, for example, the child may miss their playtime still, but a teaching assistant would be on hand to talk to that child, to give them the understanding, and also to be a listening ear, just in case that child leaves that listening ear. Parents should be contacted to let them know that the child's not being picked on. The senior members of staff are aware that the child is going through that traumatic experience or has had that traumatic experience, but on that particular day, that particular occasion, they need to be punished, but how it's all being managed. And if that communication is kept between the main caregivers, I feel that it would help to develop the trust between the head teacher and the main caregivers, to let them know and reassure them that they're not, trying to point fingers at that child, and they're not trying to re-traumatize that child necessarily.
So it is. So what I am hearing, it's about managing the situation and bringing the necessary people together in order to manage it. And you mentioned like the head teacher. Why the head teacher?
The head teacher tends to be, within primary schools, tends to be the lead on safeguarding.
Right.
Would have more experience on how to manage these situations. Head teacher, deputy head, they would disclose what they need to special educational needs coordinators, and maybe the safeguarding officer, homeschool liaison officer also. In order for things to be managed appropriately. Definitely.
So the child, as you said, instead of being traumatized again by this punishment from school, maybe you can't go on the trip, or you just lose your playtime. It's about just things like that, managing that.
Yeah, and communicating with the child, communicating with the family, communicating with the staff. Everyone's on the same page, so creating that safety container for the child, even though they're being punished. Just creating that safety for them, so less chance of them re-experiencing that trauma.
So it's really thinking things through before you,
Definitely.
I would say to teachers, head teachers, work together as a team in order to help that child instead of just coming out with a punishment, lose your playtime, don't go on, you're not able to go on the trip, so that the child is not traumatized again. So it's everybody being on board and working together as a team. Do children understand their traumatic event? Do they understand what they've gone through?
In my experience, some children sort of normalise the traumatic event. So is it okay for me to just give you an
Absolutely,
example?
absolutely.
It's completely confidential. But one child that I worked with, he was the main carer for his mother. His mother was drinking alcohol. She was an alcoholic. He would be looking after mum and making food, etc. If mum was unwell, he was the main carer. When he was removed from the family, he was heartbroken, as in, who's going to look after my mum? So he didn't realise that the experiences that he was having with differing relationships that mum was having, which were violent relationships that he was witnessing because he was protecting mum. Sometimes if mum was being beaten up, he would be protecting mum. So he was worried and concerned when he was removed from the home, who's going to look after mum? So it was about the team again that you mentioned before, social care, coming forward, supporting him, supporting his aunts who took over the care for him. And his aunts, the social care department made the suggestion of them not allowing him to do anything in their care initially. And initially, whilst I was supporting him, it was very frustrating for him. He was very angered, and yet it was him just being shown what it was like to be a child.
Absolutely.
And to be cared for.
Right. So it's about, so he had to kind of, in a sense, what I'm hearing is relearn that.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you it sounds as though you had to kind of support it.
Yeah.
Support it.
Yeah.
And in the supporting it, he said he was very angry.
Definitely. Very, very angry. But because there was lots of communication between myself, even with the social care, with his aunts and everyone, we were all on the same page and supporting him. He still felt safe, even though this anger was being displayed. So, you know, it's really a lot about teamwork as well.
Yeah, coming together as a team and working with these traumatic children. Well, we're going to have to go for a break now. Okay. Get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a drink, but come straight back because, you know, as you can see, this is a very informative, educational topic. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to Born to Win. Today we're talking about trauma and Elizabeth Dixon is here to help us answer the questions about how best to support a child who has gone through a traumatic ordeal. Elizabeth, how long does trauma stay in a child's mind?
That's a very, very big question. In my experience, it varies. So really it's when the individual is prepared to work through that trauma. And that may be when they're an adult, that, you know, maybe when they're a child. We really don't know. I think it's just about creating a safe environment for them, giving them that opportunity if they do want to work through that trauma. You know, so really it's down to the individual. It could be a lifetime, you know, and cause them challenges, you know, when they're adults.
And that just goes into my next question in terms of, as you said, working through their trauma in different ways and when it occurs. So maybe it could be in a situation where they get angry very quickly, or they're shouting at people.
Yeah, yeah. So if that behaviour is displayed at school, it's about managing that behaviour at school, giving them that opportunity to have breakout time from lessons. So where in secondary schools they would be given like a pass card. Different secondary schools call it different things, but they're allowed 5 or 10 minutes out of a lesson with this particular card. They may have to go to the medical room or go to a senior member of staff. They would have an allocated member of staff that they can go to, have 5 minutes, calm down, and then go back into the lesson. And that tends to work within the secondary schools. With primary schools, because the staff and teachers are a lot more hands-on, the teaching assistant is more available, she can just remove the child from the class into another space within the classroom environment, or sometimes just outside the door if the child needs it.
That's quite interesting, because I remember when I worked in schools that when children thought that they needed time out, which I think is quite good. Oh, it's been triggered. I need time out. I'm going through something. And they would just, as you were saying, they come and ask the teacher and say, oh, miss, could I take some time out? So that is part of them managing their traumatic ordeal.
Definitely. And it doesn't always work, because if that button is pushed to an extent that they want to lash out at that individual, they may have to lash out at their individual within their mind, not saying that that's the correct behaviour to use. And then that would all have to be managed differently, because if they hit another child, you know, then they would have to be chastised, etc., etc.
But I think what is actually good is, once again, everybody coming on board, understanding this child and realising that they need this extra time out. So they can actually ask for it before they get to that stage, hopefully.
And it's a method that works really well at the schools as well.
Yeah, because I have experienced this. But would you say most schools, most secondary schools are aware of this? This is something...
In the secondary schools that I've worked in, that's the method that's used.
Right.
So the individuals, sometimes they're put on report, but it's not report because they're using bad behaviour. It's report because they need more eyes on them. So giving the child that little bit more attention at school quite often works. So it's like the low-level method of putting them on report. So because they are displaying negative behaviour, but it's also because of the level of it, the staff know that that child just needs that little bit more attention. Otherwise, behaviour could become unmanageable.
Right.
So sometimes they're on it usually for a term or half a term, depending on the child, and it's reviewed weekly with the parents. And the child knows as well, and it's reviewed a lot with the child too. And within the counselling room, I would bring that into the counselling session as well. So it's always being reviewed of how they're managing at school.
I think that's really, really useful. In terms of the child, so it's really about looking at every situation in a positive way and making steps to help this child with informed decision in order for them to get a win situation. And it's a guidance really in them. So we I think in actual fact we have come a long way in terms of how we do support children. Whereas, you know, back in the days it was just about, you're rude, get out of the classroom. Who do you think you are?
And then you'd find the child would just be wandering around the corridors.
Absolutely. And this constant thing about shouting at children. Do you think shouting at children is damaging at all?
Definitely. Shouting at children quite often just makes them shut down. They don't actually hear what you're saying, and it will just be a further challenge because they'd lose respect for you, and it will just cause problems with the relationship. As soon as with the children that I've worked with at school and privately, once the member of staff shouts at them, they just that's it. They don't like that member of staff anymore. They won't put their hand up asking for help with their classwork when they need support. Then that spirals into them misbehaving because they don't actually understand the work, and they refuse to communicate with the teacher. So you have to repair the whole relationship with the teacher. With the parents, there's a little bit more understanding with their carers. They kind of know, okay, I've done something wrong, but they don't necessarily want the carer to shout at them. But there is a little bit understanding, a bit more respect, so more chance for a swifter repair with that relationship because they understand that they've misbehaved, or that parent almost not has a right to shout at them, but keep them safe. You know, they would prefer if they didn't use the method of shouting to do it, but they know that they would hope that the parent would be keeping them safe.
So in a situation where, just as a parent, you've had enough, you've gone to work, the boss has been moaning at you, you haven't reached your target, you haven't reached your deadlines, you've done the school run, you've managed to get out of work, you're doing part-time work, you've picked up your child in your school run, they're mom, you've got two of them at the back of the car, they're arguing, they're shouting, they're asking you for sweets. It's just, you by the time you get home, you're up here. And all you want to do is just say, shout. What would you suggest a parent, I'm sure we've all been there. What do you suggest a parent do?
I think to all parents out there that have shouted or have used that method, don't be hard on yourself. We're only human. But I would say definitely one suggestion would be time out for yourself. Just a little bit of time out for yourself. I don't know if that would consist of 5 minutes in the lavatory, because that tends to be where you can lock the door, or if that child would give you 5 minutes just to have a cup of tea before you start doing whatever, or if you just pause and can give that child those 5 minutes attention to hear about their day or whatever it is they're screaming about, could also work. It all depends on where you're at at that time.
So it's as you said, we've all been there. It is about maybe taking that time out for yourself is so important. So it's about nurturing yourself, being aware.
Yeah, not only nurturing yourself in that moment, in the heat of that moment, but ongoing. What methods of self-care do you use? Is it prayer? Is it church? Is it meditation? Is it exercise? Is it healthy foods? How do you nurture yourself as a parent, as a carer, as an individual?
So it's not just about give. Children come first. Yes, children do come first, but you need to be in a very strong place and a good place in order to give back to your child. And if you don't have anything to give because you're running so low, you've given everything to your child, what do you have to give apart from leave me alone? It's very important, viewers, to look after yourself, nurture yourself, take that time out. You deserve it. And as Elizabeth said, don't be too hard on yourself. You're doing a great job, and don't be hard on yourself. Children are they're on loan to us, and we have got them for a certain time, and that's our time to do the best we can do with the given knowledge that we require. Going back to the word nurture. We just mentioned how we nurturing ourselves. How do we nurture children?
Nurturing children would be about creating that safe space. You as an individual knowing what a safe space is, and if you don't know what a safe space is, to reach out for support and help, and being honest with yourself that you're challenged with nurturing and looking after the child that you've got in your care. I think it's a lot about being truthful for you as a caregiver, and knowing when you do need that support and being open to that support and not feeling judged because you are asking for help or because you just don't know as well.
I'm wondering, is it also about pride as well? Because we're parents, and you know, it's an innate thing. We have our children. We're just supposed to know. They're crying. We pick them up. We hug them. Whatever we're going through, we have to protect our children. Is it about pride not asking for help or support?
I think in some cases it can be.
Do you think people of our community ask for help?
Not as much as they should,
Right.
in my experience. But once they do ask for help, then they are open to that help, understanding that it's coming from a non-judgmental place.
Right.
Because it is about them being judged, or the fear of their children being taken into care, and situations like that. So they may just continue to act as if they know what they're doing the best that they can, but unknowing that the child is not in a completely stable environment.
So for those of you parents, guardians, foster carers, ask for help. Don't be frightened to ask for help. Help is out there. And, you know, a lot of people that I know have gone for help and they have been supported tremendously. There are parenting courses out there. It doesn't mean that you don't have a clue of what you're doing. All it is doing for you is helping, giving you more knowledge. And you can never not have enough knowledge. Hosea 4:6 says, through lack of knowledge, our people perish. People perish. So knowledge is very important, right down to parenting. Knowledge is powerful, and the use of knowledge. So it's all right about having knowledge, but then having this knowledge is about using it efficiently. Thank you for watching Born to Win. My name is Barbara Allen.